Hey everyone, welcome to part 111 of my Pokemon game series in Unity. So in the previous video, we refactored the run turn state, but we did not handle things like switching Pokemon. So in this video, we'll refactor the code for switching Pokemon, and we'll also fix a couple of bugs that we have in our game right now. So let's look at how to do that. By the way, I started a new series on Patreon that covers how to make a 3D Pokemon game like Pokemon Legends Arceus in Unity. So if you're interested in making a 3D Pokemon game or a 3D RPG game in general, then you can check out this course on Patreon. So by becoming a Patreon, you can support this channel and get access to the 3D Pokemon series and get some other cool rewards like the complete project files of the series, some exclusive tutorials, and access to the Discord community. So before we start, I want to say a huge thanks to all the Patreons who are currently supporting the channel. You guys make the series possible, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you. So let's start the video. So for switching Pokemon, we need to go to the party state where the player can select a Pokemon to switch. So we have already created a party state before. So inside the game states, here we have a state called game party state. But the thing is, this is a state of game controller and it's not a state of the battle system, right? But we can still use this state by pushing it on top of the battle state. Okay, so we don't have to make it a substate of the battle state. Instead, we can just push it on top of the battle state in the game controller state machine. Okay, so that is the approach I'm going to use because most of the logic will be same when we open the party screen from the free roam state and the battle state. So we don't have to define a separate state just for that. Okay, but over here we have to add some extra code because right now in our party state we only have the code for selecting a Pokemon to use an item on. Okay, so over here we also have to handle the cases that arises when opening the party state from the battle. Okay, so we can do that by adding an else if condition and checking if the previous state is battle. Okay, and by the way, we can store this in a variable called previous state just to make our code a bit more cleaner. Okay, and let me also use the previous state variable from here. All right, so if the previous state is battle state, then we also have to handle some extra cases. So if you go to the battle system and look at the handle party selection function, here you can see when we select a Pokemon, we have to check things like if that Pokemon is not fainted and if that Pokemon is a current Pokemon in the battle. Okay, so we can just copy these two conditions and we can paste it in here. Okay, so here we don't have access to the player unit, so we'll have to access that from the battle system. Okay, so we have a reference to the battle system in the battle state, right? So here we can just expose it using a property. All right, and now since we have the battle state here, we can get the reference of the battle system from it. Okay, so we'll have to convert the previous state variable from a state to a battle state. Okay, only then we'll be able to access the things that are inside the battle state. Okay, so let me just store this in a variable, and now from here we can access the battle system from the battle state, and from that we can get the player unit, which is the current player Pokemon. Okay, so if a Pokemon is selected, then we'll make sure that the Pokemon is not fainted and it's not the Pokemon that is currently being used. Okay, so if these two conditions are satisfied, then we can go ahead and switch the Pokemon, right? But switching Pokemon is not the responsibility of the party state. From the party state, we just have to return the Pokemon to switch, and the actual switching logic should be handled from the battle state itself, right? So from the party state, we just have to return the selected Pokemon. So what I'll do is I'll create a property that we can use to output the selected Pokemon. Okay, so let me create a property called selected Pokemon, and I'll just make it set private. All right, and then from the enter function, I'll set the selected Pokemon to null. And when we select a Pokemon, I'll go ahead and assign its value. Okay, so now over here, we don't have to create a separate variable. We can just go ahead and use the selected Pokemon property. So let me change these. Okay, and finally, if a Pokemon is selected when we are in the battle, then we can just pop the party state and go back to the battle state and switch the Pokemon. Right. So let me go ahead and pop the party state. All right. So next, when using the party state from battle, we also have to handle some other cases when we press the back button without selecting a Pokemon. So when we press the back button without selecting a Pokemon, we have to make sure that the player's current Pokemon is not fainted. If the current Pokemon is fainted, then the player should not be able to continue without selecting a Pokemon. Right. So we have to handle this case from the on back function. Okay. So from here, first we have to check if the previous state is battle. So let me get the previous state and check if it's battle state. Okay. And if the previous state is battle, then we also have to handle this case. Right. So let me go ahead and copy this condition and paste it over here. All right. So again, to get the player unit, we'll have to convert our previous state into a battle state. All right. And now I can just say battle state dot battle system dot player unit. All right. So that is handled. And by the way, from the on back function, we can also just set the selected Pokemon to null so that our battle state knows that the player pressed the back button and the Pokemon was not selected. Okay. So these are all the cases that we need to handle for battle. So now we can go ahead and switch to the party state when Pokemon is selected from the action selection state. Okay. So from here, we can just push the party state. But remember, party state is not a state of battle system. So we can't push it into the state machine of the battle system. We'll have to push it into the state machine of the game controller. Right. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll get the reference to the game controller using its singleton. And from here, we can get the state machine and push our party state into it. Okay. If you want, we can just rename the game party state to party state itself because we are using it from battle also, right? So I'll just use Control RR and rename it to party state. Okay, and here after pushing the party state, we have to wait until the player selects a Pokemon, right? So over here we have to use push and wait instead of just using push. And in order to make this wait, we'll have to write it in a coroutine. So over here I'll create a coroutine called go to party state. Okay, and let me put it inside the coroutine and wait for it using the shield returns. All right, and after this we can get the selected Pokemon from the selected Pokemon property of the party state. Okay, so let me just store this into a variable. So if the selected Pokemon is not equal to null, then that means the player selected a Pokemon, right? So in that case, we can set the battle action to switch Pokemon and then change the state to run turn state for switching the Pokemon. Okay, so first I'll set the selected action as switch Pokemon. Okay, and then I'll change the state of the battle to run turn state. Okay, and here, just like we set the selected action, we can also create a property for the selected Pokemon. So I'll just duplicate this and create a property for the selected Pokemon. Okay, and now from here we can also set the selected Pokemon before we change the state. All right, so now we just have to call our go to party state coroutine if Pokemon is selected from the action selection. Okay, so this will switch to the run turn state with action as switch Pokemon. All right, so now from the run turn state, if the action is switch Pokemon, then we have to go ahead and switch our current Pokemon, right? So I'll just uncomment this line, and we can't call it because the switch Pokemon is defined inside the battle system. Okay, so we can just make it a public function, so we'll be able to call it from the runtime state. And while we are here, we can remove any unwanted lines from the switch Pokemon. So here we don't need to set the state like this because we are not going to use enum states anymore. And then we don't have to do things like send the trainer Pokemon if we are in the about to use state. Things like this will be handled from the about to use state itself. So it's not really good to write them inside the switch Pokemon. The only responsibility of switch Pokemon should be switching the Pokemon that we keep over here. Okay, so we can also remove this parameter because it's not used anymore. And now we can go ahead and call the switch Pokemon if the selected action is switch Pokemon. Okay, and for the Pokemon to switch, we have to use the selected Pokemon that we are setting from here. Okay, so let me go ahead and remove this line. So yeah, this is all you have to do for switching the Pokemon. So let's go to Unity and try testing this. Okay, let me start a battle. All right, so now when I try to open a party state, I'm getting an error. So that is because we renamed our party state, right? So we might have to reassign it. So yeah, over here you can see that our party state script is missing because we changed its name. So let me just remove this and attach our game party state again. Oh wait, it's called party state now, not game party state. So let me go ahead and attach that. And to this we have to assign the party screen. Okay. So now let's go ahead and test, and hopefully it should work this time. Okay. So let me select Pokemon and open the party screen. That's working. And let me try sending out a different Pokemon. All right. So switching Pokemon is also working. So next, we have to handle the case where we switch the Pokemon when our current Pokemon faints. Okay. So the logic for that is inside the check for battle hour function of the runtime state. So from here, we are checking if the fainted Pokemon is the player Pokemon. And in that case, if there are any other healthy Pokemons in the player's party, then we are opening the party screen from here. Right. So now we can't just call the open party screen function. Instead, we'll have to push our party state. Right. So from here, I'll go ahead and push the party state into the state machine of the game controller. All right. So here also we have to use push and wait because we want to wait until the player selects a Pokemon. Right. So let me go ahead and push the party state. And if we want to wait for this to complete, then we'll have to make our check for battle over function a coroutine. So let me go ahead and do that. And since this is a coroutine, I'll add a yield return while calling it. Okay. So now we can wait for the player to select a Pokemon by adding a yield return in front of the push and wait function. Okay. And once the player selects the Pokemon, we can get it from the party state dot selected Pokemon. Right. Let me just add a braces here because we have multiple lines. Okay. So we can get the selected Pokemon like this. So let me go ahead and send out that Pokemon by calling the switch Pokemon function. Okay. And I'll also add a yield return to wait while we switch the Pokemon. So this is all you have to do. And by the way, we have an error here because we can't just return from this function because it's a coroutine now. So I'll change this to yield break. Okay, we'll be changing this when we implement the about to use state. For now, let's just keep it like this. Alright, so now let's go ahead and test the case where we switch the Pokemon after our current Pokemon faints. So let me start a battle real quick. Okay, and let me just switch to a weaker Pokemon so that it will faint much faster. Alright. And I'll just keep playing till my Pokemon faints. Alright, so now my PG just fainted and we should go to the party screen. And from here we'll have to select a Pokemon. If you press back, then we are getting this message. Okay. So let me just select a Pokemon and you can see that we are sending him out. Alright. So yeah, switching Pokemon is working properly. So before I stop the video, I also want to fix a couple of bugs that we have. So let me show you the first bug. So when I select a move over here, you can see that the first move is still blue. Okay. So the reason for this is because in our text slot, if a text is selected, then we are setting its color to the highlighted color. Right. So the problem is when we exit a state with the color of the text has highlighted color, and when we open it the next time, we'll set the original color to the highlighted color. Okay. So to fix this, we just have to clear the color of the text while we exit the state. So what we can do is in the iSelectable item, we can also create a function called clear, and let's also define that function over here. And then in the clear function, we can just set the text color back to the original color. All right. So now from the selection UI, just like we set items when we enter the state, we also need a function for clearing all the items when we exit the state. Okay. So let me create a public function here called clear items. And from this function, I'd loop through all our items and call the clear function. Okay. And then I'll also clear the items list, which is not really necessary to fix our bug. But since the name of our function is clear items, let's go ahead and clear the items list also. Okay. So now from the move selection state, from the enter function, we are calling the set moves function, right? Which is in turn calling the set items. So since you're doing that from the enter function, we have to clear it from the exit function. Okay. So in the exit function, I'll call selection UI dot clear items. All right. So this issue won't be there for all the states. It'll only be there in cases where we change the state and then come back instead of pushing the state and popping. Okay. So in such cases, you can just use the clear items function to make sure that everything is cleared before you exit. So now let's test and see if that issue is fixed. Okay. So yeah, now if I go back to the action selection and then go to the move selection again, you can see that we don't have that issue anymore. All right, so that's fixed. So next I want to show you another issue that we have. So to demonstrate the issue, what I'll do is I'll select the fourth move of the Charmander, and then I'll press back and switch to a Pokemon that does not have 4 moves. Okay, so let me just switch to a level 2 Pidgey that does not have 4 moves. And now if we go to the move selection, you can see that we are getting a argument out of range exception because the Pidgey doesn't have 4 moves. So the reason why this is happening is because we are not resetting the move selection to 0 from the set moves function. Okay, so from here we just have to reset the selected item to 0, and that should fix the issue. So let's go to Unity and check if it's fixed. All right, so now if I do the same, I'll select the fourth move and I'll switch to a Pokemon that does not have 4 move. And when I go to the move selection this time, you can see that we don't have the issue anymore. All right, so that is also fixed. So we refactored switching Pokemon and we fixed a couple of bugs in this video. So I'll stop the video here, and in the next video, we'll refactor the about to use state to use the state stack architecture. Alright, so thanks a lot for watching. Before you go, please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to my channel. That will really help me out. So I'll see you in the next video.